Now I'm using the ProCrate system on this job, and I really like these castellated trays, or egg boxes as some people call them, and the reason I like them is because you'll see that the pipe just slots into it absolutely beautifully. You've got all your spacings worked out for you, whereas when you pin through the insulation it can pull up, you've got to measure it all out. I just prefer this, and the other reason I prefer this is because it protects that silver foil layer of the insulation, so you don't need to put down a sheet of polythene on top of the insulation, although you can, there's no harm in doing that. But what we're going to do when we go around the edge, when you put the expansion or the isolation foam in around the edge, you can actually attach it to this to stop any of that liquid screed going underneath. We've got the straight one without the polythene on the bottom, so we're just going to make a seal all the way around the edge with a bit of foam. The important thing here is that when you're laying these trays, they look the same. You'd think that was all the same, but what you've got is a small one and a big one, and the reason is that's a male and female and they interlock. So if you get it the right way round when you start, then you haven't got to worry, because all you've got to do is push it in there and it just locks into place absolutely beautifully. No need for any hammers, no need for any bashing or anything like that. Now the only problem is, of course, when you get to this bit, you've got the big one on the top, so you need to just sneak your little one underneath, and if you do that, that will now interlock there and there. So that's beautifully joined together, and the important thing is the screed won't seep underneath it and float the whole thing up. Now, I said these look the same, but once I put my glasses on, I can see that they're different. And the reason they're different is that if you look at the male, it hasn't got any ribs on the edge there. That's a smooth edge. If you look at the female, the bit it's going to go into, it's got these little ribs on the sides. So we want to turn it round so we get the one with the ribs on top of the one with the no ribs. By the time we get to the next room, we'll be experts. Now, I am like a kid at Christmas because I've always wanted a decoiler. The thing that's put me off is the price of them. Years ago they used to be really expensive and I couldn't bring myself to buy one, but I've actually ended up with pipe tangled around my neck. I've had two guys helping me unravel a 100-metre coil, so I've always thought one day I must get a decoiler, and now this one from Underfloor Heating Store is so competitive it's hard to refuse, quite honestly. So here we go, I've entered the 21st century. So when you cut the wrapping off the coil, it's obvious, but just don't attack it with a standing knife. This is tough old pipe, but you want to keep it in good nick. So I'll just go around with a pair of scissors, keeping the blade out the way. And that way, we know I've never ever had a problem with underfloor heating leaking, and I don't want one. Now, when you get your kit from the Underfloor Heating Store, you get a drawing, and it's very, very important that you follow the drawing because it's all worked out and you don't want any trouble. So what it tells you is the coil sizes here, and it tells you the run. We're going to start with this green circuit here, which means we're going to come out of the door in the boiler room and we're going to go round the floor. And we're going to do that in a snail pattern. The snail pattern is by far and away the best thing if you can do it, because what it does is it puts one flow next to one return, if you like, all the way through, so that you've got an even heat. So if you do it the other way round, which I've done on many occasions, which is snake it up and down, it means that you've got one end of the room which is hot, you've got the other bit that's colder. Now, I don't mind that in some respects, because if you've got something like bifold doors and you're going to put most of your heat up at that end, the cold end of the room, to me that's absolutely fine. But they've worked it out. This is the way we're going to do it. We're going to follow this drawing to the letter, and then we won't have any trouble. So now we've got all the pipe clipped into the tray, we're going to connect it up to the manifold. Now this is nice and easy because we've only got 3 circuits on here, so that's 6 pipes. So we connect them up in pairs, they're numbered on the manifold so you can see which circuit is which, So make sure that you've got a pair, blow down one, and you can feel it coming back up the other. Cut it slightly long, thread it through the back. So what I do is, once I'm happy with the position of that, I take the cutter, put the cutter hard up against the bottom of the fitting there. That's where we want the pipe to be, just there. We take the re-rounding tool, just give it a turn like that. It just reams that edge off. Now it's beautiful and smooth. Each fitting's in its own little bag. The nut goes on first, then the olive. This is not a typical olive, this is split here. It doesn't actually seal the pipe in any shape or form. So you don't have to worry about putting sealants on this pipe or anything like that, because all that will do is clog up the valve there, the flow valve. The seal is made, 2 of those inside the pipe. That's 2 seals, and then there's also a rubber seal round here. So once that's tightened up, that olive that's there will clamp on that pipe and stop it coming out. It'll squeeze it together so it'll seal the pipe on the inside, and it'll make a perfect seal. You don't need to worry about these at all. These are absolutely perfect. So long as you do that, you make sure you keep the pipe pushed up into the fitting, get a start on there, hand tight, and then just give it a little push just to check it's up in place. Once you're sure it's up in place, tighten it up. And again, you don't need to go crazy with this. You'll see that it is starting to tighten it up nicely. It's clamping around that pipe. But if I now try and pull that pipe out, it's absolutely in there, rock solid. If you find when you've tightened them up and you fill the system up under pressure that you've got a tiny little weep coming out, give it a bit more and it'll be fine. The other one of that pair, cut that off. So the only other thing we need to do once we've finished is to just write on the pipe so that we know which pipe is for which circuit if it's ever disconnected. But what you can do, if you prefer, is to connect up each circuit as you go, rather than do what I've done and leave all the pipes in the plant room. You can complete one circuit, connect it up, and then carry on doing it like that. It's quite nice to do that, because then you make sure you've got the pairs in the right place and you know where you're going. What have I not done here? Re-rounding tool. Very important. It doesn't take a lot. Just ease it in there, 2 or 3 turns. That will now go in there absolutely beautifully. And you don't need to worry, because the re-rounding tool comes in the kit along with a pair of cutters. So what I also like to do, cable tie the 2 pipes together. So what I'm doing here is I'm just using the garden hose for now, just to pressurize it. So the idea of doing this is to go round on each circuit. We'll open all the circuits up fully, and we have the valves open at the bottom so that everything's open, and then one by one I'll close the circuits off, and then when we're sure that every bit of air is out of the system, we can put a little bit of pressure into the system and leave it there. That'll be fine. Now we've reached the stage where we've got all the pipe working and we've filled it with water, and that's very, very important, because if you leave this pipe full of air, when the screed is poured in here, it's going to want to float upwards. Now it's pretty well caught in the nodules, if you like. If you imagine all this full of air, it would have a tendency to want to rise to the surface, and if it does that, you can't cure it. It's too late. Make sure it's all in there, make sure it's all filled up with water, get all the air out, and then when you do that, the screed guys can come in and pump the screed straight in. You'll have no trouble. It's under pressure, so you've got a little bit more pressure in there than would be normal, and as the screed cures, it heats up, and what that does is it expands the water in the pipe and it gives you even more pressure. So as the screed is curing, the pipe will expand very, very slightly more, and then obviously once you put normal pressure in it, it'll be fine. Now all the way around the edge, we've got the edge isolation fitted, or insulation as some people say, but the idea of that is that it gives us an expansion gap for the screed. We've got a bit of a funny thing here because we've got a kind of a ledge a little brick ledge there, but this is a cellar, so that's kind of the stepped footings, if you like, of the whole house. So we don't want to mess around with that. We're leaving that. The screed will come up above it anyway, and that screed is so strong that I don't think there'll be any trouble with it cracking, but you can get fibres put into it to reinforce it even more. It's a bit of an unusual job we've done here because we didn't put down any concrete foundation before we put the insulation down, but we've been assured that the way we've done it is perfectly okay. This house has been here a couple of 100 years. It's not flooding in this basement, so once we get that screed in there and we get the weight on top of this membrane, I don't envisage any problems with it cracking or any damp problems either. So you can see that we haven't actually gone into the alcoves with the pipe work. We consider it's not really necessary because there'd be furniture in there, so we don't need to warm that area. The rest of it is absolutely covered. So in this room, which is going to be a studio, there's going to be a central desk, a big central desk with people working on all sides of it. We've got all the data cabling and the power supply coming up in the middle. That's going to be absolutely sealed 100%. The important thing here is that when that pump screed is put in, we don't want it getting underneath the castellated tray. So we've got to make sure when we go around the edges that we've sealed every single thing. So another thing we're going to do, we're going to use a few horseshoe clips. Now, they're not really necessary, but there are a few places where the ProCrate is rising up and we just want to pin it down onto the insulation. It won't matter, once the screed goes on, it'll weigh it down and it won't flap about, but we just thought, just for good measure, we could go around with a few clips and just put those in those spots. So the next time I will see this job is when the screed has been poured in and I come back to connect it up to the heating system and also to put the control panel in. I've connected up the manifold now to the flow and return on the heating. Before we just had it pressured and it was isolated, and now I've put the isolating valves in here and I've done a power flush on the system. I actually expected to get loads out of it, loads of black stuff, but it wasn't that bad actually, which is slightly baffling in a system of this age, but maybe it's just been emptied a few times, cleaned out. Never mind, I've done it, and I think it's kind of due diligence really, because the last thing you want is for any rubbish to be going into your underfloor heating system. They do recommend you put a filter on here, inline filter, but as we've got this mag clean going on the main system, I'm not going to put one on there as well. It's a bit overkill. I mean, these are about 80 quid a pop anyway, so I think we'll be fine. And the good thing with underfloor heating is that if you do get any problems, if it does start to silt up, you can just put a hose on there and a hose on there and you can flush the whole thing through. I don't think it's going to be a problem, quite honestly, famous last words. So now I'm going to disconnect this power flush, cap off, put the mag clean back on and then fire it up. So as always, I'm up against it. I'm working a little bit late because the electricians are coming in tomorrow and they're going to work their magic with all these cables because there's a real mess in this boiler room. What I've done here is I've got the return stabbed into the return at the top for the boiler. That goes round through the filter. I've got the flow coming in at the bottom. Now you can change these around however you want. You can configure this left or right. You can bring the pipes in up or down because they've got these very handy little elbows here which will just swivel around, and also we've got a valve on each of the flow and the return, and these are really good because they're now a direct connection and they've got a rubber seal in there, so all you've got to do is go on with your male arm 3/4 and you're away with it. So it's a very, very simple thing. All we're looking for is a flow and a return, and the closer to the boiler the better, but the flow rate through this isn't huge. If we look at it, this circuit here, according to our drawing, is going to be 1.35. That's the flow indicator wound right down. There's nothing going through there now, so we're on 0. So as we wind it, as we open it up, rather like opening up a tap, you'll see the float, the little red indicator there, will start to go down. Now we've got just about half a litre a minute going through there and we want 1.35. So we go down a bit more, and that's giving us 1, and you can actually hear it start to come through now. Let's go down just a tiny bit more, and that'll be it. That's 1.35. Now we've done that, that won't need adjusting again. we can just pop on the locking. Now nobody can come along and fiddle with that. Same here, just about the same as the other circuit, not quite, but the way we did it, we even them out anyway on the pipe runs. So we're going to give that, there you are, look, that's nearly off. So we come back down, there's the one, back round a little bit more, and lock that one off. Now, when we put these actuators on, these are just rather like thermostatic radiator valves. They will allow the circuit to open and close. At the moment, they're fully open. If we wanted to close those manually, they give you some black caps. We could just simply screw those down. That would be for servicing or something, but we're fine, we'll leave that open. And again, this one, the last one, we want at 1.9. This is the studio, so I reckon there's about 1.9. So that's absolutely fine. We've got those. There'll be air to release from here. And at some point, if there's any problem, you can purge out a bit more on the mains, but you can hear that. That's it, that's coming out nicely. So we've got a nice self-venting system. The only thing we would really like is to pop that thermometer in there so we can monitor the heat coming through on this system. Now, when you start off, keep this valve right on the minimum, and then gradually you can open it up day by day. They reckon just about a degree a day. Keep the thing running 24/7, and we just turn it up bit by bit by bit by bit until we're on about, we're going to say, try and run this at 35, 40 at the most. And we've also got floor sensors in because we've got a laminate floor going down there. We need to make sure that the floor temperature doesn't exceed about 27 degrees Celsius. So that will be controlled on the room thermostats we've got, and they will close this off. If the temperature in one of the floors gets too hot, it will simply close off the particular circuit. So I don't envisage any problem, and provided we keep this cool, you don't want to be walking about like a cat on a hot tin roof. It just needs to be a very gentle background heat, and that's why underfloor heating is so economical, because it's spread out, it's a nice low heat, and you feel comfortable. Even though the temperature's lower, you feel comfortable. So the reason that we're going to turn this up 1 degree a day is because the screed needs to just adapt and just expand and contract, do whatever it wants to do, settle down. And if you've thermally shocked the screed when you first turn the heating on, supposing you just turned it right up, and I have seen this, you get lots of hairline cracks through the screed because you've basically heated it up too quickly. Now, they're not the end of the world, those hairline cracks, because the integrity of the screed should still be all right. This one is a very, very strong screed, so I don't envisage any problems with it. The screed guy, Jim, said just do it 1 degree a day and you'll be fine. You have a night setback temperature on these thermostats, which means that if that temperature in the room drops too low, it will kick in just to maintain that temperature, just to bring it up, so that in the morning, when you switch it on, it's not starting from cold. There's already a bit of heat in the floor, the room is at a nice comfortable temperature, so it will just build it up again. And that's the way it works best. You can control it from the thermostat, or you can control it from the app. Link this up to your phone and you can control it remotely, which is quite handy. So that is the ProCrate system from the Underfloor Heating Store. I really like the way the pipes go in here, keeps it all neat, and you can get it in a kit if you just want to buy all those components. They do package them up nicely, and it's a great company. There are lots of different companies around that do underfloor heating, but I've found them particularly helpful. They've got patience to explain things to you, and their website covers all the different versions of underfloor heating, so they're bound to have something that suits you. So follow the links in the description below and give them a visit. So the great thing is that plan they give you all nicely laminated, and if you follow that, just follow it, don't deviate from it, you will find that you can't go wrong.